All right, and here we are. We're back with part two here. Everything working here. So yeah, so you're telling me about the scene, the scene in the village at the time. Now, how did you uh, uh, uh you you knew Felix Pappalardi, or how did that?
Well, Felix Pappalardi, he was playing with a lot of, he's backing up a lot of folks in the village, folk
Mhm.
singers and others, and probably doing sessions. I didn't know Felix that well, but we did a rock and roll show, and it was Murder the K's 53rd Street RKO show with the top of the food chain was Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels,
Mhm.
Wilson Pickett with what's his name on drums? Oh,
Not Buddy Miles, yeah,
yeah, Buddy Miles.
but Buddy Miles, yeah, yeah,
On drums, and there was a band from Canada called the Mandela, I believe. And then the Fifth Dimension played on that show. The Young Rascals did a guest appearance. It was basically 5 shows a day. Uh, and what we did before the shows is we'd go, all the bands went out anywhere in the woods or wherever they could go to shoot videos. You don't remember like Strawberry Fields Forever? I think the Beatles did a video of
sure.
that time in the woods, trees and something. And the Blues Project, we walked in the streets of New York with Wilson Pickett. The camera guy came with us, shot some of Wilson, who was wearing an all green suit. He was way cool.
Nice.
And then we went on and did our silly antics in the street. You know, it was a silly.
Mm.
So so it turns out that we shared a dressing room with Cream. Uh, we were like about 3 floors up, and we shared the dressing room. So we talking with Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce, and of course Ginger Baker. Funny,
Mm.
I'd bring a little practice pad into all, any gigs just to warm up.
Sure.
And Baker, man, I bring it in, and it had like a particle board base with a piece of rubber glued to it. And Ginger Baker looked at it and he says, "What the fuck is this?" He took the rubber and ripped it right off the pad. And I thought, boy, that was, yeah. What am I going to do about that? So, and he is 2 bass drums, so obviously he could overpower me. But in any case, they were the Cream was promoting their Fresh Cream, that album,
Sure.
and they would do their 20 minutes of playing, because what they do is they'd show their video, the screen would roll up and the curtain would open, and then you would be playing, performing.
Mm.
So they would Ginger Baker's kit was on a riser with wheels under it. They'd wheel it out behind the curtain, and they'd hit it, and they'd be playing "I Feel Free,"
Mm.
that tune. And it sounded great. And then when they were done, curtains closed, screen came down, drum riser moved, my drums were moved into position, and then our little video went, screen goes up, curtain opens, and we're blasting away "Wake Me, Shake Me," some up-tempo tune. If we
Sure.
play like crazy for 20 minutes, curtain closes, screen down, next act. So we did 5 shows a day, for a week. And I wished I had a friend of mine who was a filmmaker. I don't know if people were allowed to do it, but to shoot videos, or not, they didn't have film, 16 millimeter. It would have been
Sure.
great to have that. Anyway, uh, that was an interesting gig. We, hung out with the Cream guys. Everybody was very, very British, very nice. Ginger was rough on the edges, of course. And we went to Central Park during one of our breaks. And we went with Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton. We went to a be-in. Remember when be-ins were happening?
Sure.
You know, in Central Park. I think everybody was dropping acid. I don't know. I think
Mm.
Cooper must have had some. I don't know. It was crazy. We did that. We sat, had some Chinese food, in a restaurant, Then we did another set, and set number three, out of
Mm.
five. But that was a hell of a show. And um, Sid Bernstein was our manager at the time, and he could get things done. I mean, he had done the Beatles at Shea Stadium.
Sure.
A lot of people owed him favors, and he was also handling the Young Rascals, and they were definitely high on the charts, with
Mm.
Reuben. So that was, yeah, that was an interesting. Felix, okay, so during the course of, or after the whole show, after the Murray the K shows, Felix Pappalardi was producing Cream, I think
Mm.
Israeli Gears.
Yep.
And so Andy Kohlberg, bass player with the Blues Project, and myself, they told us to come down to the studio. So we came into the studio and they were tracking Sunshine of Your Love, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I listened to it, and then I think they did two takes. Then the next tune they broke into, I'm sitting there just listening to, the details of recording, which, he could switch from different instruments and all that on the board.
Sure.
And they went into White Room, which had that cool extended bar,
Mm.
that tune goes. And it was just great. It was really, it was humbling for me in many ways because I think Ginger was a much more advanced player than myself at the time,
Hmm.
and I needed to do a lot of homework. I felt always, and I did. I studied with a variety of teachers: Stix Evans, Sonny Igo. Um, I think his son teaches or plays around here, uh, one of the Igos. And Stix Evans was cool. Art Blakey's son was an interesting teacher. He said, "Hey, at one lesson, he said, you think my dad is good, Art Blakey? You think he's good? Check this out." And he stuck my head between two stereo speakers and played "A Love Supreme" with Elvin Jones and John Coltrane.
Wow. Yeah.
You go listen to this guy on drums. Uh, and but that was so that kind of moved me along the learning curve of expanded drumming.
Mm.
Uh, Al Cooper was always very supportive of me learning new stuff because he I visited him in his apartment, and his bookshelf was filled with solid with LPs. Okay,
Mm.
it's like in a library where you have a ladder on wheels and to climb up to the highest like shelf, right?
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what it was set up like. And then we kind of look around, and he'd pull a record out and go, check this out. And it'd be like some Dizzy Gillespie or Salt Peanuts,
Hmm.
and some other stuff. And he was so active in music. He'd been a professional player. I mean, what he wrote, like Who Wears Short Shorts and This Diamond Ring.
Yeah.
He was a writer. Al Cooper was a writer, and he was in a building next door to the Grill building, which was known for its many floors of songwriters, right? And
Hmm.
in New York, and the building next to it. And I guess he had a room with a spinet piano in it. There were all other levels of other songwriters. And I think they were paid a nominal fee every week to sit and write songs. And I met a guy one time, a guy named, that was David Hess, I think it was. And he was an actor, and we were talking about the Brill Building and writing songs. And David was in a was in a movie. He was an actor. He was in a movie, Last House on the Left. It was a slasher film,
Hmm.
and he wrote a tune with some other people called Speedy Gonzales. And this tune, like, was huge in Latin America.
Wow.
Speedy Gonzales, and he uh, he got a call because he was in the writing battalion, so to speak, of writers, and he got a call from Elvis or he had to call Elvis because they needed to write 200 songs for 10 movies that he was going to be in, slated to be in, and
Wow.
something like that. And so he called up Elvis and he said, talked to Elvis and he said, Elvis, what kind of song you want me to write for you? And Elvis said, "Fuck me, suck me, I love you." That was that was that was the suggestion. Okay, run with that. Okay. Okay. All right. You know. Anyway, uh, so yeah, that just the we did some interesting stuff in the Blues Project. We're asked to do some interesting recordings. One of them was for Merv Griffith, and he uh, he was producing a guy who billed himself as the Covered Man, and it was a singer, folk singer, who wore a mask,
Mm.
shtick, right? And the folk singer was an actor to be, I guess, but his name was David Soul, who was
Wow. Yeah.
From Starsky and Hutch.
Saskia and Hutch. Yeah.
And so we recorded a tune called The Covered Man for David Soul, for Billy
Mm.
Griffith. And fast forward, way forward to, I suppose, 1990 or so, somehow Andy Kohlberg, uh, who was on the session, somehow through some connection got connected with David Soul, and David ended up making him his music director. And Ted Templeman produced "Don't Give Up on This Baby."
Wow. Yeah.
Soul, and I think Jimmy Hodder was the drummer. I think Chris Mickey may have been on guitar. He'd worked with Van Morrison, and they had a hit with that with David. And so David's career as a singer songwriter, it was interesting. Before he went to L.A., he was performing in Shelville, which is just outside of Sonoma, the town of Sonoma,
Hmm.
with Norton Buffalo. They're doing like a folk act, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. And then so of course David went down to L.A. and I guess they created those characters, Starsky and Hutch, cop show.
Hmm.
But he was an international television star as well as having a hit. And so he was able to tour all around the world. And he had his band, which was made up of Andy Kohlberg, Chris Vicky,
Hmm.
the guy, I mean, incredible studio players and singers. I think Amanda McBroom was in that band for a while, and she had just written The Rose for Bette Midler.
Wow. Yeah.
And she was one of the backup singers and an actress. And uh, there was a so it was they had a there was an interesting opportunity for the Andy Kohlberg and Chris Vicky for touring. You know, they would go out for a weekend to Philadelphia or another city. You know, be picked up by limo, flown, get all the equipment's there, sit down, play the gig for whatever hour and a half, and go home or go to
Mm.
the gig. Well paid, great gig. I was lucky enough, in a sense, to go down to South America with that band for a couple there in Japan. But it was the music itself was the best part was the Tom Scott overture to Starsky and Hutch show, the theme song.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot that he had done that. Yeah.
It's like a funk, kind of a funk groove, you know,
Oh, it's great. Great. I just recently met Tom Scott. I totally had forgotten about that. Now, was it true you were asked to join Leonard Skinner on drums?
well, that was interesting. Yeah, I moved out of New York City uh, and to Louisville, Kentucky, because I did a tour with a version of the Blues Project, which the band had finally sort of separated before any other reunions of the original band. And I had a girlfriend, and we went down to Louisville. And I lived in an ex-slave quarters on 40 acres. And it was like rent free because we were caretaking like a bunch of cows out in the field. and but uh, while I was there, I took a trip with my girlfriend down to Atlanta, where Al was living, and
Hmm.
we went out one night. He said, "I want you to hear these bands." So we had three bands on a subsidiary label of MCA called Sounds of the South Records,
Hmm.
and we sat up in the balcony, and Leonard Skinner was on stage, and he kind of knocks you with his knee and goes, "Check this out. This is their hit," and they go into Sweet Home Alabama,
Hmm.
right? And it sounded like a hit. It just the three guitar players. It was well crafted, well played,
Hmm.
well sung, and then I went back to Louisville. It was a fun visit, and I got a call or I talked to Al, and he said, "Hey, listen, why don't the drummer has the first drummer they had has a drinking problem, and he's going to leave the band. He said, why don't you come down and jam with these guys? I think you'd fit right in." I mean, they were doing tunes like "Call Me the Breeze."
Sure.
Is that uh, Saturday Night Special?
Yep.
Uh, and I thought, well, let's see. These guys, they probably don't like black people. They want the South to rise again. God forbid if you have any Jewish heritage in you. So three strikes. I decided, nah, I don't really want to do that.
Mm,
But it may have been the right decision. It may not have been, but it certainly would have been a good money decision for a period of time, probably, if it worked out. But, or then again, you'd be looking for, if you could read the tea leaves, you'd be looking at a motor falling off an airplane. So,
I was gonna say, yeah, you could have been on that flight. Yeah, yeah,
right. And that whole story is a whole crazy story too. Where they end up landing in some farmer's field,
yep,
uh, crash landing. Three of the guys, or two of them were dead, and then and the pilot, I guess, and then I think the drummer crawled out of the plane, and a farmer thought he was like attacking or something, and he shot him.
sure,
You kill him, I don't think. But then it turns out that all the farmers and folks around there started rifling through the plane, taking things and pieces of the plane and equipment and whatever. Crazy story. Yeah, no, I mean, plane crashes have been notorious for wiping out our wonderful musicians. Buddy
sure,
Holly, Otis
yep,
Redding, Ricky Nelson, whose
yep.
birthday is today, or Monday.
Wow.
Monday.
Yep.
Yeah. Robert
Yeah,
Johnson, Ricky
the
Nelson.
story of what was I going to say, of Waylon Jennings apparently giving a seat up to Buddy Holly.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But really lends credence to the phrase, "But for the grace of God, there go I."
And that whole Stevie Ray Vaughan thing, the
Hmm,
helicopter crash, what a shock, that was really weird. All of that is like, when you think back, Monday morning quarterback, of course,
sure,
you think Mario Cipollina for a moment had the Huey Lewis, I think, was playing at the East Bay, that gig out there. What the hell is that called?
not Shoreline. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And
Okay.
uh, uh, and he told Bill Graham, he said, "Hey, listen, let me drive you back. Let me drive you back to Marin."
Yep.
Right? Bill said, "No, I'll take the hill."
Wow. Yep.
So
I'm not.
yeah, I mean that was yeah. I'd actually been when I heard that news, I'd been working at uh, David Grisman's acoustic studios, acoustic disc, and
Hmm.
and Jerry Garcia was kind of floating in and out of his studio here.
Wow. Yeah.
They'd worked together, and I heard that news. I was just shocked, really. Because I knew Bill Graham to some degree. I didn't do business with him, well, except playing when we played the Fillmore.
Sure,
But on a personal level, he was you know, he was a good guy to me
sure.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of classic gigs, how did you guys end up playing the Monterey Pop Festival with the project and did you see Otis Redding play Monterey Pop? Yep. These are
Yes.
leading questions, as you can tell. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. It was I think what happened was at first when the producers of the show found out that Al Cooper had left the band, uh,
Hmm.
but he was I think the stage manager of the Monterey Pop Festival, and but he I think convinced the promoter to have us come on. Maybe he was
Hmm.
oh I'll jam with him or something, you know. But I don't know what he said. I don't know how he did it, but I think he got us to go there. So we went. We even had my drums shipped out. I mean, you could see the original drum skin, Blues Pride, my red
Yep.
sparkle Ludwigs, which, by the way, I gave away that drum skin to a guy in Santa Fe where I was playing with a band called Greased Lizard. And that skin you're seeing up there on the wall, can you see that? Right up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I don't know if it's coming in clear. Is that sharp, clear? You can see it. And
Yeah. It looks fantastic. Yep. With the rainbow and the tiger, the lizard. Yeah. Yeah.
lizard is eating psychedelic mushrooms. So
Excellent.
the vibrating colors. So every time I kick the bass drum, the mushrooms would kind of jiggle around a little bit. Anyway, it wasn't edible though. But yeah, so that drumstick went. So we yes, we had the opportunity to play at Monterey, I think due to Al. And we had a guy named John McDuffie who took Al's place,
Hmm.
kind of a soul singer guy. And I think John is no longer alive now. Um, yeah, we've had a lot of folks who were involved with the Blues Project who have passed on, you know,
Mm.
years, which happens. The interesting thing was on the Saturday night before we were going to play, we played on a Sunday.
Hmm.
Uh, was I heard the Jefferson Airplane played, and the fog was starting to roll in at Monterey right into the stadium. It was getting moist and cold, and they their music it did a little. So it didn't really warm it up much, but then I was standing behind a scrim that was hiding people backstage, but you could see through it. And I was about, I don't know, about 8 feet away from Al Jackson, the drummer,
Mm.
Otis Redding. And the Booker T, Duck Dunn, Steve Cropper, the Bar-Kays, and Otis Redding uh, came out, started with the tune Shape. Otis
Hmm.
was off stage. He comes in during the opening of that tune, and the place lit up. It just you know, I think it just seared through all that fog and this again. You know, the heartbeat was there, and
Wow.
uh, um, they went through that tune, and then they started "Try a Little Tenderness." Uh, I was standing next to Tim, who played with the Steve Miller Band, the first drummer.
Hmm.
His last name, but
Tim Drummond.
yeah, I
Was it
think that
Tim?
was,
Yeah.
uh, well, maybe it was Tim Drummond. No, anyway, but we are both watching Al Jackson, obviously, or just checking the whole thing out. But anyway, so they start off "Try a Little Tenderness," and as you know, as a guitar player, the arpeggio beginning to that tune, the way they
Yep.
do, you know, it's like the time is kind of floating. You don't
Hmm.
know where it is, right? I mean,
Sure.
exactly. Well, after the first, I guess, verse, uh, all of a sudden, out of the blue comes click, 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 you know, the rim shot with Al Jackson,
Yep.
establishing the time, the groove, the beat, the tempo. You know, I mean, they've done it a lot of times, but to me, it was total. total magic, total magic.
Wow.
And magical, like the way so many of those Motown tunes that we all love would start. Remember, like you would almost like the downbeat. You're not sure where the downbeat is until the riff establishes where the downbeat is, and the tune sort of begins, or there's a drum fill that comes in to lay down the one, you know.
Sure.
But just total musical magic, you know, that we all love about music because
Sure.
there's so many possibilities and variations that are possible, genres, all that. It's like you could never get enough in this beautiful world we have, and that's why you're a teacher and you teach kids, everybody, adults, how learning different genres and different grooves is a real healthy thing to do, I think. I mean, you could
Sure.
focus only on Muscle Shoals and the Staple Singers and that groove, and probably be happy the rest of your life, if you could nail that. But I listened to lately Dan Penn, who wrote
Hmm.
Dark End of the Street and I'm Your Puppet, and listening
Yep.
to the songwriter's version, real good
Sure.
sing. But then you hear like a production of the tune, which is it's just fascinating and amazing. Creative ideas, sonic ideas, come out. So that stuff keeps me going.
Yeah. Speaking of keeping you going. So before we get into the modern the modern current version of a blues project, how did you end up? Speaking of another Monterey pop veteran, how'd you end up hooking up with Barry Melton,
Ah, wow.
another Monterey pop alumni? Yeah.
Well, Barry Melton tells the story how he and Country Joe were on the East Coast and they opened up for the Blues Project at the Cafe a Go Go.
Mm,
They did a set, and that so he talks about that, and we laugh about it on stage, of course. And throughout the years, we were friendly. Of course I was living on the other coast, and then those guys were all Berkeley guys and
mm,
San Francisco. And I think when I first started playing with Barry, he had been in Spencer Dryden was in the Dinosaurs.
yep.
That remember that band? John Cipollina,
Sure. Yep. And
Peter
Merle
Allen.
Saunders.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And while they were being the Dinosaurs, I think I don't know. I may have just come back to the Bay Area,
Hmm.
1977, and uh, uh, anyway, they were busy doing that thing. And then I think Spencer got sick and he died. He couldn't gig as much, and the Dinosaurs disbanded. Or then
Hmm.
Merle Saunders was doing his Rainforest band.
Yeah. With Garcia. Yeah.
Yeah, and um, and that the band sort of was reforming. I think I'm not sure, but I think Steve Kaiser, who has booked Barry Melton for years,
Hmm.
may have gotten a hold of me and said, "You want to sit in or want to do something? We're playing the saloon."
Hmm.
And and then Peter Alvin was playing, and there was another guy on keyboards, and Mike Hinton was playing guitar with
Sure.
Barry.
Yep.
Because he had been with the Rainforest band with Merle, I think. That's
Mm,
right.
I
Uh,
remember him. Yep.
but real tasty player. Well, so uh, we started to do these gigs, and it felt cool. It was fun, very fun. Barry was a really entertaining lead guy. He,
Hmm.
he he deliberates from the stage as being an attorney that he is, uh, and so he's just very comfortable doing that. So along the way, the keyboard player wasn't happening. I said, "Hey Steve, why don't you check with Banana? Check in with Banana. I think he could fit in."
Mm,
So Banana joined on and started playing. That was really great. It was working good. And then along the way, Mike Hinton passed away.
Well,
Uh,
yeah.
and then I had said, I got a guy I play with up here in Sonoma. It's really, really cool. You got to hear him. I think he'd fit in here. Dave Aguilar. So
Excellent. Yeah.
Dave got into the Barry Band. And so that is the kind of, well, right now, speaking of the Barry Band, we Natalie Martell sings and writes
Yeah.
with Barry, and
Hmm.
um, um, and what else? And it's Peter Alvin.
Yep.
Sometimes Steve Ashman will fill in, and
Hmm.
sometimes uh, Slim sits in. As a matter of fact, I think you've
Oh,
been.
yeah. That guy's coming along. Yeah.
I think you've sat in on few occasions,
Oh,
right?
yeah. 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 Yeah.
We did the Mystic, and we played an Artista gig, and
Yeah. Yeah.
probably something else, I'm sure. But uh, anyway, that the Barry Band is really like a classic band of '60s guys, pretty much.
Hmm.
Dave is an honorary '60s guy, you know.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, the shortened version of the Barry story.
Excellent. So before we get into the modern the modern blues project, which we may say for part three,
Sure.
as the clock the shot clock is ticking, is it true that you once gave the famous Wild Man Fisher? He was looking for transportation, was he not? Yeah.
Well, Andy Colbert and myself, uh, we started C Train. Uh,
Yep.
Actually, C Train produced the last required contracted album for MGM. It was
Okay.
called Planned Obsolescence.
Mm.
And if you look at the back liner notes, there's a tune on it called Nierhis Hornpipe, which is basically C Train spelled backwards. And and we had a whole new band for the Blues Project. There was no
Mm,
Steve Katz, no Danny Kalb, no Al Cooper. It was just Andy and myself.
mm.
And but we had commandeered Richard Green, who's a fabulous, fabulous violin player.
Sure.
Wow, it's great. A guy named John Gregory, who was in a band who Chet Helms suggested we have John join the band.
Mm.
And John was in a band called the Mystery Trend out of San
Heard of
Francisco.
them? Absolutely. Yep.
And on bass, we used a guy named Donnie Kretmar, who came from the prior Blues Project version that Danny and I had created. And Donnie also was an excellent bebop sax player. I
Mm.
mean, he really serious sax player. And so that band produced the last required MGM record, and then from there we got a deal as C Train with A&M Records, and we did one album for A&M. I think One Way Records bought out the masters and reproduced it, but that to me it's a very interesting record. We had a lot of some interesting time changes. The textures of the songs and the use of melodies. It did not have kind of the pulse that I had gotten so enamored with after listening to Otis Redding live.
Mm.
I,
Sure.
I, I became a devotee, sort of. I mean, I wanted to move to Memphis. I wanted to play with horns and that just a big, wonderful, groovy swinging, moving, all that. Yeah, but Street Train didn't quite do it for me at that time. But I moved, so I ended up moving to. I left the band. I moved to Colorado, and I became a lumberjack. And
Mm.
I learned how to stir my coffee with my thumb. It was a great skill. And eat jalapeno peppers and drink beer. It was like a big change from the Bay Area for me. And that left
Come on back. Come on back.
until the snow started flying. We started the Blues Project.
Come on back. We're having technical difficulties here. Come on back. Come on back. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Come on back. We're frozen in time. We're frozen in time here. Come on back. Come on back. All right. I guess we'll be back with part three there as we cure our technical difficulties.
Oh, it started
All right,
again.
it's not. It's not. We'll be back with part three.